I don't remember what I said. Anyway, glad to see everyone on this hot summer day. And we have a governance committee meeting to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and call this governance committee meeting to order at 4:05 p.m. So to get started, I just want to sort of just to level set, these policies are, as you know, the state passes laws, those are written into policy. We then have to take a look at them, and as a board, we need to pass them as policies that sort of fit within our existing structure. That is what almost all of these are, is our interpretation of some new or adjusted state law and policy. So I am going to turn it over to Dr. Sevier to sort of just go down through all of these. I think what we'll do is we'll get through each policy with just the little brief explanation of what's going on with it, whether it's an adjustment, whether it's a new policy, and then we'll have time for some questions at the end. Does that sound like a good way to go? All right, then I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Sevier.
Thank you, Chair Masters, and thank you for that introduction. And you're exactly right. The vast majority of these are laws that have already been passed and codified, and so we just want to make sure that when people go to our policies, that the language of the law and the language of our policies are aligned, so that they're not getting bad information in a particular place. Let me start with the first, and also likewise, most of these are really pretty nuanced corrections, and if there's something other than that, I'll be sure to point them out. You do have a cheat sheet in front of you that's sort of a summary page that's which came in your agenda packet, but I took the liberty of printing it out so you'd have it there with you so you could sort of follow along. The first one, as you'll see and also see on the screen, is highlighted, and the law has changed to allow, in the past, the requirements for being a member of the Board of Education was a high school diploma. Then they added GED, and then they added HiSET, and I believe there are some other tests that the State Board of Education will be bringing online at some point. So they wanted to, rather than just having to go into this every time that a new type of credit by or diploma by exam equivalency opportunity was created, they just said, or any other exam as approved by the State Board. This is what that says, and you see that there, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Hi, David. Has there been any consideration by our state to adjust the criteria for becoming a board member?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you. I apologize, Emily. I'll do that in the future.
That is all right, because I thought that was a very good question.
Are we going to take a motion and vote, or do you want to plow through each one? I think that would probably be cleanest.
I would entertain a motion.
Motion to move to approve policy 1.102.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed? Oh, okay. I take that with love. Yes. Yeah. Okay. One opposed. But so it passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Policy 1.106 adjusts the Board of Ethics of the Board of Education, and it says that, it enumerates all the various things that are required of you as board members. And at the bottom, the law has changed to require a point of contact for the Tennessee Ethics Commission, so they know where to send things. And that will be the chair, that will be the director of schools, who will most likely, in that case, funnel that to our office, but because the board has the authority to direct one employee, that would be the director of schools. And then that person has the authority to direct anyone under that person's purview. So that's the only change to that.
So previously there was no requirement to have a point of contact?
That language did not exist.
There was correct. Nothing?
Yeah, I don't know where. It was probably sent to a director of schools.
Sure.
But now it's codified.
Okay. All Okay. If there aren't any other questions about that one, I would entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, unanimously passes.
Thank you. Policy
you.
1.400 opens up opportunities for additional attendance of school board meetings virtually. I think the pandemic probably showed that school boards could still function effectively via the internet, the web, and this does open up two opportunities. One is illness, and if the doctor says you're too sick to come to a board meeting, but you still want to participate, you can, and you can do that up to 3 times, and due to inclement weather, up to 3 times. That doesn't have anything to do with whether or not a board meeting would be canceled because of inclement weather. It just says if you can't get your way out of your driveway, that we're still going to have a board meeting and you can attend virtually.
Yes, Board Member Tyler.
There. So does this still create the situation where the physical number of people have to meet quorum in order for it to work?
Correct.
Okay, just
That
wanted to
part
double
doesn't
check.
change. You'd still have to have 5 people, 5 voting members present.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Sharon.
So how does this align with, so the work-related? Well, if you're out of town,
Yeah, because right now it's like
Yeah.
if you are out of state for work,
yeah, so if you're out of state for work, does that count? So are these times cumulative, or do you have 3 times to do it sick and 3 times to do it, how does this work?
The way I read that is they're not cumulative, that if you could
Three
be
of each.
sick 3 meetings in a row, and then if you gave 5 days' notice that you were going to have to be out of town for work, then that would be an opportunity. I do not see in the policy anywhere it says, and in no case shall anybody miss more than 5 meetings or anything like that.
yeah, Berthena.
In the event that we try to schedule an online board meeting, does this policy address that? Can we do an online, if we move to everyone hold the board meeting virtually?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still overridden by the whole 5 people in person for any of the votes to count thing. Yep. All right, any other questions about this one? All right, would anyone like to make a motion?
I move approval.
Okay,
Second.
all right, all in favor? Any opposed? Okey dokey. It passes, holes and all.
Right. Thank you. 1.901, Charter School Oversight. The law requires that there be a progressive intervention for a charter that's not meeting the measures of their contract. Instead of going 0 to 60 and an automatic revocation, that there are intermediary steps. The law says that the policy should provide an overview of the process. This does not have explicit detail. That's more of a procedural issue about how many days, to whom the letter is sent, that sort of work. This says that there are 4 steps. A notice is issued, a notice of concern is issued, a notice of delinquency to the governing body is issued, a notice of probation, and then finally issuing a charter review process prior to any sort of revocation action.
We'll do Tyler, and then Block, and then Nabah McKinney.
Is there any length of time that is required between these notices?
I'm sure there is, and that's in the administrative procedure piece.
Okay, great. And did they increase the authorizer fee for increasing the amount of paperwork that we're going to have to do?
This policy is silent on that.
All right. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Aaron?
I had the same length of time question, and then also just like what are the qualifications that need to be met in order to have met the things within the notice of concern, or the notice of deficiency or the notice of probation? Like, how is this actually implemented? And that might not be a policy thing, but I would love to hear some conversation about that. My understanding would be we pass the policy and then the procedural comes after. It would be nice to have a report on the procedural in order to know what things we are agreeing to do, because the revocation or non-revocation is our responsibility, right?
You are correct, and you are correct also that that's a much larger document than would traditionally be in a sort of 30,000-foot view policy. We can get that information to you.
Yeah, this seems like an important enough change in law and change in our review and our ongoing requirements around overseeing charter schools that having some level of detail about this would be really helpful.
Yeah, Berthena.
So following up from Ms. O'Hara Block, my question is there any indication in this law that if we go through these policies and that the charter did not meet their obligations, will revocation take place? Or is there still the place where we will be taken over, our decision will be overthrown?
So I think if I understand your question, is that if we were to not go through these steps,
No, if we are to go through those steps with a charter to make the necessary improvements, and they have not made the necessary improvements in a timely manner, will the state intervene if we move towards revocation of their license?
Or are we then required, I mean, it's sort of partially my question as well, are we required after issuing a notice of concern and say, for example, it's 30 days and within 30 days things are not met, are we required, allowed, et cetera? How does then revocation become part of this conversation?
so there are kind of two paths to that, I believe. One is if something is so egregious that it needs to be dealt with immediately, then it's dealt with immediately. You do, if it is such a material breach of the agreement that revocation is necessary for the safety of students, right? But otherwise, you hope that whatever the issue is, the deficiency gets taken care of with, small letter A there, without having to go to B. But to the revocation piece, I think all the other processes and other relief that a charter school would have with the state are still in place. It's just saying that these 4 steps have to occur before you can go straight to revocation.
So they still can go and appeal our decision?
That's my understanding.
Okay, okay.
Any other questions about this policy? Yeah, go ahead.
So these are this is literally the language that is within state law?
This is the language that I received from our charter office because they gave deference to the district about what does your progressive intervention plan look like. And this has been developed by our district. This is the path we want to take forward in order to correct
Did you have something?
deficiencies as we find them.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Terry, I'll run.
I have a clarifying question to make sure that we get what you're looking for, Ms. Block. Are you wanting, when we get that procedural stuff written out, you want to see it? Is that what you're asking for? Or are you asking for something in addition to what you already see here right now?
I want to know how this operates and therefore what it requires of us and what it allows of us. And I don't feel like I have enough information in what is written here to know what it requires of us and what it allows of us in what time frame. Does that make sense?
I think so.
And so I find myself reluctant then to want to say, this one looks good to me, I feel like I get what is required of me and what is allowed of me as a board member.
Dr. Gentry?
Yes, so I think what we probably need to do here is kind of separate the requirement from the process, right? So this is a thing that has to happen. We still have an opportunity, I think, to engage in conversation around the how it happens. Is that fair to say? Sorry, I'm kind of asking Dr. Battle, Ms. Masters, I apologize.
That's all right.
But I think that so if I follow the process clearly, the state has said every district must have a progressive intervention policy. This is the policy.
Yeah.
These are the steps that we will go through when we find or we have some indication that the charter is not performing, adhering, in compliance, whatever the thing is. The how we do that, what does that look like, the timeline, how much time is there between A and B, who owns that implementation plan, that action plan, all of the nuts and bolts of that, I think are a thing that still needs to be developed or is in development that will come to us, and I believe that we'll have a chance to engage in conversation about that.
And I
So I don't think this is, I'm sorry.
What?
I think having this policy is not negotiable. The A through D, the policy itself is not negotiable. The A through D were created by our own internal charter office. The nuts and bolts of what that looks like in action, we haven't seen yet.
Yep. And I think this brings up a point that we've hit quite a few times in previous governance committee meetings, in that the policy is by design very kind of large, broad. And we actually have been working on not putting anything overly procedural into policy, because these are they have to be evergreen. They have to be something that we can adjust as the state makes adjustments, but then our policies can be a lot more fluid. And from year to year, we can sort of work within what is going to make the most sense for us as a district. And I don't know, I saw movement. Did anybody else want to?
Dr. Gentry's summary.
Okay.
Kind of hit on the points that we were.
Okay. Okay. All right. Great. I do agree, though, with Erin that it is nice when we pass these policies to then have some follow-up where we get a deeper understanding of how it's being implemented in MNPS. All right. Is anyone ready to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Breed. All right. And all in favor of passing this broad policy?
Evergreen.
This broad evergreen policy. All right. Any opposed? All right. And just noting for the minutes that we will look forward to having a follow-up conversation about the implementation and the procedure of it. Okay. So the next policy, this is the only one that isn't a result of some state level help. So I'm going to turn it over to Chair Elrod to sort of walk through this one with us.
Thank you. So we, can you hear me? Nope. Hello, there we are. So, yes, this is the only one that is, we'll say, board created as a policy that we're going to discuss. So I've been working on this with Dr. Sevier, and it's about our travel expenses and reimbursements for additional travel that we need to do for board work. That, of course, not just includes additional trainings and meetings, but things like our TSBA, though that's not outside of our city. We still a lot of times have to pay for parking or something along those lines. Or if we have to go to Metro Law, we have to pay for parking in those cases. The policy as it existed didn't necessarily cover those things, and so we wanted to make sure that we had those things covered, as well as you can see, lines 17 through 21. We removed the part where the board chair technically got 2/10 of the budget, and then everything was divided equally. That was problematic because there are some people that don't take advantage of their travel expenses or their additional training expenses, and some people that do need to, and then we didn't want to have any wasted dollars. The other thing that was a big change in here, as it was stated in line 9 and 10, attendance at conventions and meetings and such were supposed to be authorized in advance by the board. That's not something we were necessarily doing as a board. We weren't taking a vote on who could go where, because I don't think that's necessary. So it's now just done by the chair, which is what we've already been doing, but it was just, we're putting in our own policies of what we were already practicing. So that is this. It's not necessarily what classes you can take or what additional conventions you can go to or anything along those lines. It's specifically about our travel expenses and reimbursements. And to me, it's probably most specific to like parking and that kind of thing as well. Any questions or concerns?
So just, where does the oversight for us come from? I mean, obviously, you will review, so if I request parking, if I request way more parking than everyone else does.
What happens?
Yeah.
So what you would do is you would send, of course, proof of that, which we have to require, which is, so you send that in to usually Ms. Bobo, and she is who does our original oversight of, is this allowable? Is this something that they're supposed to be downtown for? Were we aware of this? And in some cases, we're not aware of it because you've been requested by Metro Legal to come to something or something along those lines. So she would be our first line of that. Outside of that, it's the executive committee, which is Dr. Battle and myself.
And then I would assume there's anything else that is public funds, there's an audit procedure that occurs as well as it needs to, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
And I would just point out that, when we choose a chair, we are choosing her, hopefully always her, to help aid with decisions like this. We're sort of putting our trust in the chair to help with this oversight. And I think, there may be, again, a deeper conversation at some point around what is covered and how do we determine whether or not that is related to the overall strategic plan of MNPS. Does it fit in with the work that we're doing? But, this is absolutely necessary because, as y'all know, there are things we are required to do by state law in that area of attending conferences and legislative sessions and such.
And we have a more active board than the majority of the boards that we are colleagues with across the state, with people that want to attend sessions, be involved. Plus, we're lucky that it's usually here in Nashville anyways, so we're more available to those things. And so I'm glad that we're that involved and not just state policy, but the practices of it. But we need some coverage on that as well.
Yeah, Berthina.
In addition, I believe last year, the state increased the amount of training and professional development that board members were required to have, and I appreciate this because it helps to adjust that coverage of attending more professional development and training.
Mm-hmm. And I believe we do remain the only elected body in the state that is required to complete a certain amount of professional development, interesting as that is.
And have a GED or equivalent.
Yeah, and have, yeah.
That's true.
So any more questions about this policy?
Anything else?
Okay. I would entertain a motion. Okay. Board Member O'Hara Block moves to...
Second.
Y'all need to behave. All right. All in favor?
Aye. Go search.
Any opposed? All right. Carrying on.
Thank you. Policy 2.805 just strikes some outdated language regarding the board approval for various purchases. We always have the single purchase of $100,000, but not necessarily bringing things that are permanent fixtures like a cabinet, in a classroom, and those sorts of things. This really is just aligning the policy to our current business practices.
Any questions about that one? Any motions? All right. All in favor? And any opposed? All right. And just to clarify, when someone is saying so moved, they are saying they are moving to pass the policy that has just been discussed for the minutes. All right. moving on.
With your permission, I'd like to take the next three as a block, since they all sort of come out of the same public chapter and all deal with safety. So.
Permission granted.
Thank you. So the emergency preparedness plan just changes some language. There are some listings of annual drills, and there were armed intruder drills, and you see we struck that out and then put that up into a new section on lines 22 through 26 of the first page, where incident command drill and an emergency safety bus drill are already added. So it just creates a listing there of those, and it doesn't really change anything at all about an armed intruder drill. It's all still done in conjunction with law enforcement, and all those things are still occurring annually. Secondly, this is a new policy for MNPS, even though we do have threat assessment teams. You see how this is all in yellow, so this is a brand new language. It just codifies the practice of having threat assessment teams at a district level. We also have other threat assessment teams that assemble when necessary at school levels. So this is taken directly from the statute. You can see where anytime you see a superscript like a 3 or the 1, 2, or 3, and all those are straight up tied to, in this case, the legal references at the bottom. And then finally, security makes a change. Law says that you can't leave your school building open, you can't leave your school building open during school hours, nor can you do it after school hours. So that has been a concern, and probably rightfully so. So how should a district manage that? I think that has been managed on an ad hoc basis. The way we'll manage it now is it'll either be a school employee that's there for the after-school extracurricular event, or if it's a group that's using one of our buildings that's not necessarily associated with MNPS, they will need to designate that person in the facility approval request process. Who's going to be there at the door to make sure that people aren't coming in that shouldn't be in the building, that are not part of your AAU basketball team, aren't part of your knitting club, aren't part of your community organization. And that's those three.
Okay.
Move to approve three policies, 3.202, 3.204, 3.205.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, all three pass.
Thank you. This cleans up a little language in 4.204, summer instructional programs. Now that these are, well, first of all, it takes out those specific dates, because we know those are here moving forward, so there's not a necessity to limit it to just those years. But in terms of attendance, as part of the third grade camps, there's a 90% attendance rate within the law. So this says, this makes clear in our policy as well that those mirror one another, and discusses how parents would get information about the attendance policy through the enrollment process. And and that there is a process for making up days. And one more thing, pardon me, and it's important that this be consistent across all our sister districts, that someone doesn't go 90% in another district and they say, don't worry about it, you're transferring to another district next year, that's not a problem. Or we wouldn't want to do that to somebody, and I hope another district wouldn't do that to us. So it's important that our language be stable with all our sister districts across the state.
Motion to approve policy 4.204.
All in favor? And any opposed? It passes unanimously. Looks like we have another group coming up.
We do have another group coming up, thank you. So around extracurricular activities, I did take the liberty of removing this first line, number 1, the board shall initially improve extracurricular activity. to ensure support and supervision. The board has never done that. I think we kind of have, in a way, through the student handbook approval process, but I think that could lead to confusion when someone says, I want to see the vote where you started a volleyball team at, the new Lawson school, right? And we would say, well, we don't have a vote. Well, we have a student there, so this just sort of cleans it up and says, we're going to use that process to determine what students can avail themselves of. And then down here, makes clear that if you are part of an extracurricular activity, that there's active parent knowledge and agreement that you are part of that organization. It's April and you just now found out your child has been going to the bird watching club all semester and you didn't know about it, and now you're upset because you didn't know that. So it's this, rather than it being a passive permission, it's an active permission. In terms of surveys, 6.001, it's very similar in that now, in order to participate in a survey or analysis or some type of evaluation, that the parent agrees to that. It's an opt-in versus an opt-out in order to participate in those types of activities. And then, likewise, a parent can excuse their child from health screenings if they so desire. If they decide that those screenings are not for them. And it strikes language down here at the bottom, and I want to make sure I address this, while we are advocating except in the event of a COVID-19 or any variant outbreak. That's outdated language. There will never be another COVID-19. If there ever is another COVID, it would be called 23 or 24 or whatever year in which it was discovered. So that just doesn't make sense to have something that can't exist back in there. So those are those three policies.
Okay, thank you. I'll start. This is troubling and problematic, I think, on two levels. One is just the phenomenon of, the parent, having to get the paper and actually do the opting in for the club. A lot of clubs happen during the school day. These are lovely, wonderful things that children get to participate in. I know I am certainly guilty of not paying attention to everything that comes home from school. And then, of course, the other side is the fact that it could remove safe spaces for children in a lot of cases. And so I know it's state law. I just needed to say my piece about it. It is troubling and problematic. Any other board members have questions or thoughts about this policy? Yeah. Board Member Tyler.
I'm in complete agreement with everything you just said, so I want to make sure that's out there first. Secondly, do these activities of a club or organization, is there any wiggle room in what time of day they're being, like if it's during school hours, they have to get permission, but if it's something else, or vice versa, is there any sort of specific language in the law saying that it must be every single club, whether it is during school hours or after school hours?
I think we have plenty of student organizations that don't necessarily meet during school hours, but they are sanctioned school organizations. They wear the school uniform, they wear the school color, they travel on the school bus. So I think this policy would apply to all of those. If there was some sort of independent organization completely separate from the school, then that the school may not even have knowledge of, did not meet at the school, that was not sponsored by the school, then that would be a different matter.
Okay. But anything, clearly you're talking about athletics, but if there is another club who decides, let's say it's like a PFLAG group that wants to meet and they don't want to do it during school hours, they want to go after school hours, would that parent still need to sign approval for that?
I believe they would,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Chair Elrod.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one is, do these students have to complete the application, or their parents complete the application annually? Or is this something you do one time to be a part of this group, and then you don't have to worry about it again? Or is this going to create paperwork annually now for all of our liaisons that help with the clubs and, of course, our families?
That is an operational question that it is certainly not addressed in the policy, but I would have to defer to someone else to how this is going to get operationalized.
Okay. And then my second question is, and this might be operational as well, is we have some schools, particularly our high schools, that have like lunch and learns where someone comes in and speaks during lunch, and students are able to come in and out as they desire to hear from that speaker, whomever they are. Is that considered a club, or is there a specific definition of what they're using for club and extracurricular activity?
I think the statute is silent on the definition of a club.
Okay.
So I think it would be prudent to think about how many times is this thing that's not a club meeting,
Okay.
to sort of think about that.
Okay.
Which can be differentiated between a guest speaker and a group of individuals who.
Get together.
And certainly a guest speaker that's distinctly tied to the curriculum.
Right. Okay.
Not so much a question as a comment, specifically on the survey issue, which is, MPS has been doing great work on surveys for many, many years, Panorama in particular. And this could potentially cause an issue with the number of students that participate or don't, and cause a problem for us in a longitudinal data sense. So I just want to acknowledge that the state is entering into something here that impacts how we are able to discern how our students feel over time. And all the other things that everyone else said.
And I pulled up the public chapter here just to kind of offer a little more color around this. There is not a really clear definition here. I also pulled one up from Georgia where they offer a very clear definition of what is an extracurricular activity, what is a club. The state of Tennessee, it does not appear offers as much clarity around that. It simply states that a minor student can only become a member of a club or organization if their parent or legal guardian provides consent. And again, it doesn't say anything about the time period, and it's anyone who's under the age of 18. Okay. Yeah, Berthina.
It's not a question, but it is a statement. I'm also concerned about the way that this policy can disenfranchise students from participating in clubs and organizations and activities if their parents are not active participants in the school and reading this. And so I hope the state understands the implications that it has for urban school districts like ours, rural school districts, students across the state whose parents aren't as active in their child's education and don't look at these forms and fill them out in timely manners. And so I hope that we can relook at this and look at the implications along the way for surveys on how best to educate our kids, as well as their participation in extracurricular activities that develops the whole child. Thank you.
And I would highly recommend that we track how this affects the participation in extracurriculars and clubs during this school year so that we can, make this an advocacy issue when we're talking to the legislature, just to help them understand how it has affected participation, because I agree with Berthina. I think it absolutely will. It's like pulling teeth to get stuff back. People are busy. It could just be as simple as that. You don't get to do it because parents are busy.
I'm an active parent.
Yeah.
And I know how I am with foolish slips.
Right.
Just imagine parents who are not as active.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion on this one? Not really.
I'm not making a motion yet.
Okay.
So just to clarify, these are things that are now in law. Therefore, we don't have really any leeway relative to passing these unless we want to go against state law.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Severe, but whether we pass it as policy or not, it's still state law.
Correct. And I always advise that our policies align as tightly to the state law as is practicable, just so there's not confusion.
So I'll make a motion to pass these three pieces. Do I need to read each one individually? 4.300, 6.4001, and 6.402. Thank you. Oh, you're looking at that.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay, we got 2 opposed. It passed. Yeah, barely. It doesn't make any difference. They're gonna do what they want to do.
Thank you. This 5.106 is a policy that states, that codifies something that's already happening, but if a person appears on a Tennessee sex offender registry or registry that related to the Department of Children's Services, that they cannot teach. And it says also if they appear on another state's registry as well. That's just never been in the law. It's something that has been checked for, but now this puts it into policy, and it's a good thing.
Got it. So similarly, a registry of sex
Kentucky or
offenders.
Nebraska
Not
or-
like not a registry of some other type.
Registry of a similar jurisdiction that indicates someone would not be eligible for a license in
Got it.
Tennessee.
Got it. Okay. Any questions about this one?
I do.
Yeah.
So currently, when we're doing these checks, are we checking outside of the state of Tennessee? Does this change our scope already, or is this currently what we're already doing? Okay,
This is current practice. This codifies that we're already ahead of the game.
gotcha. All right.
Any motions?
Motion to approve policy Motion to approve 5.106.
Okay.
Second.
All right. And all in favor? Any opposed? All right. Policy passes.
5.204 deals with the employment of retirees. Up until this time, it was required that a person, if you hired a retiree, you had to put them on a year-to-year contract. This treats any retiree that is employed as just a regular teacher, and they would get employed, and you would have to go back and revisit that process annually. Also, it changes the amount and incentivizes retirees to come back to the workforce based on the percentage that they would get paid. So they would still get their full pension, but they would also get 85% of what a salary would be at that time. It does make clear that when you come back for your second tour, that you do not get to accrue extra benefits onto your pension package.
Okay. Any questions on this one? Any motions?
Move to approve policy 5.204.
Okay. I'll second it. All in favor? Opposed? All right, passes unanimously.
5.305 codifies that those who are parents, new parents are available for family medical leave, are eligible after the birth, stillbirth, or adoption of a newborn minor child. And it lays out the amount of time that a person has to avail themselves of that, and gives various qualifications for a person seeking FMLA leave based on that set of circumstances.
Okay. Any questions about this one? Any motions? Yes, Frida.
Does foster care fall in the place of well, it's not really adoption. How does foster care play
I
into
don't believe this addresses foster care.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'll move that we pass policy 5.305, family medical leave.
Second.
In favor? All in favor? And any opposed? All right, it passes.
Thank you. 5.307 clarifies that a teacher who is physically assaulted while on the job would retain their full salary rather than simply the amount offered via workers' comp. And they would receive that amount of money until such a time that they were able to come back and fulfill their job.
Any questions on this one? Okay, I move that we pass policy 5.307.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, the policy passes.
Great, thank you. 5.600, these dovetail nicely with the one you just passed. If you look at the bottom of that, number 10, let me work backwards here, is really just kind of a restatement of the policy 5 that you just passed about a educator who's on leave due to physical, just aligns those two policies, and requires that teachers report students who commit vandalism. It adds vandalism, endangering life and health and safety of others pursuant to the same laws.
Okay. I think Board Member Buggs had a question.
I just have a quick question. Thank you. My apologies for my tardiness, but just wondering, are we adopting these because of state statutes that have shifted? And
Yes,
so
ma'am.
just updating language? Okay, thank you. That's it.
Yeah, Board Member Tyler.
I'm just looking to see within this rights and responsibilities, they have the right to provide students with a safe environment. I'm just trying to see if it's not in our policy that we are required to provide teachers a safe environment. Is that not actually in the policy? Or I guess,
Not exactly certain how it's worded, but it is not in this policy. I believe it may be in another section of our policies, and I can dig into that and look that up for you.
okay. Yeah, I would appreciate that. I think we have seen some,
It may not be a word-for-word
Negative,
translation, but it may be similar.
yeah, we've seen some serious negative student interactions post-COVID, and I just want to ensure that our teachers feel safe at their place of work.
All right. Any other questions on this one?
Motion to approve 5.307.
Second.
Oh, wait, no, I think we were on
It's
5.600.
00.
5.600.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, look at the last old policy. Okay.
All right, and Board Member Tyler seconded. So all in favor? Any opposed? All right, that one passes.
Policy 6.202 is related to homeschools, and you see that it does a similar language to what we did relative to board member eligibility and says, we're going to take out these various names of tests and just put in an approved high school equivalency credential. It's approved, and it strikes the requirement to submit proof to the director of schools of homeschools being vaccinated.
Okay. Any questions about this one?
Madam Chair, I do have one question, but it is not specifically
You
about
are
this.
recognized.
It's not specific about this, this change in policy, but I do know there were some state laws that shifted around how we engage with homeschools and what kind of, whether or not they can participate, what services, my apologies, what services we can engage with them around. I would like to maybe ask for us to maybe add that to a retreat. I just want a conversation about that because I've already gotten 2 or 3 homeschool conversations. One I've already sent to you, Dr. Severe, and then 2 more that are in the works, and I think they're going to become more prevalent. I'd like to just be as well-versed as possible about what all the different updates will look like and then what we need to be ready for around fiscal impact as well. Thank you for indulging me.
I appreciate that because I know that we have had some changes around that, and I like to be able to speak intelligently to homeschool families, especially when they're contacting me because they want to transfer into MNPS. Okay. Any other questions about this policy? All right. Yeah, go ahead.
So right underneath it says that they have to submit proof for other health services and examinations as required by state law. So
That may be true, but only the vaccination
So
portion.
they just pulled out vaccines specifically?
That is my understanding.
Okay.
I have a question. So would we still be allowed to require proof of immunization for homeschool students who will be participating in our athletic activities?
I believe that's correct.
Yes. Okay. Great. Right. Right, unless they have a different kind of exemption. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that one passes.
All right, we're in the home stretch. 6.309 adds threats of mass violence on school property or at a school-related activity to the list of zero-tolerance offenses.
Yeah. Board Member Tyler.
Does this threat have to occur on campus or at any point in time?
I don't know specifically the answer to that question. My hunch is when the school became aware of it and was able to tie it back to that student.
Okay.
Whether it was made at the school or to the school from a different location.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I will just say that I'm disappointed to continue to see this zero tolerance language added to state code. But here we are. Any motions?
Motion to approve 6.309.
Oh, okay. Chair Elrod seconds. And all in favor? Opposed? All right. The motion passes. We got one more.
Thank you, Chair. We have the benefit in our district of the fact that we have multiple placement options for students who are in alternative education settings. This is not the case in every district, so we are adding this language to the district. It's something we're already doing, but it essentially says that if we were going to put a student at a school where we thought it would be worse for the school and threaten people at that school to put them there, that we can make an alternate type of placement. We're already doing that. We already have that benefit, but this codifies our good practice, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Great.
Motion to approve 6.319.
All in favor? And that's everyone, so none opposed, so that passes unanimously. And we are adjourned 1 minute early. Thanks, everyone.